Hi, I'm Rich, and this is our final section of our fundamentals training for STK Free, and we're just going to talk about Connect. Connect is really important to a lot of people. We call it the language of STK. I'll get into that in more detail. It's not programming. It's a way to do GUI functions in STK if you're not a programmer. So what we're going to look at in this particular scenario is we're going to look at the Connect command library to understand how you can find and build Connect commands. We'll look at some simple Connect commands, and we'll use what's called the API demo utility to build those Connect commands for practice. Upon completion of this tutorial, you will understand the following: the Connect command library, simple Connect commands, and the API demo utility. We'll begin our training by opening up STK. I'm using STK 12.2. So go ahead and find your STK icon and double click and start up STK. When STK opens up, I'm going to go to the Welcome to STK window and click Create a Scenario. Inside the new scenario wizard, I'm going to call my scenario STK Connect. Your start and stop time is going to be different than mine. That's not a problem. We're focusing on Connect commands in the API demo utility and the Connect command library. Data is not an issue here, so just whatever you have is fine. Just click OK. As usual, when STK first opens up, I'm going to go up to the toolbar area, click the Save icon, and when the Save As window opens up, just going to verify I have a folder, verify my scenario name, click Save, and now my scenario will be in a unique folder. I'm going to clean up STK a little bit before I start. The first thing I'm going to do is close the Insert STK Objects tool. I'm not going to need it for this scenario. Then I'm going to come down to the bottom to the timeline view, and I'm going to close that also because it's not needed in this tutorial. In STK, the HTML viewer is a web browser that is an integrated part of the workspace. We're going to open that by going up here to the toolbar, and you're going to see a small icon up here that has HTML in it. It's called the New Integrated HTML Browser. Go ahead and click that icon. If you work in a secure environment and you do not have an internet connection, you can still use this because these tools are embedded in the STK install. I'm going to go up to the top of this, to the toolbar area, and I'm going to click on the Browse folder. When the open window appears, over on the left, you're going to see some icons. Click on the icon that says Example HTML Utilities. Then we're going to select the STK Automation folder and open that. Select the API Demo folder and open that. And finally, select the API Demo utility and open that. Let's look at the API Demo utility that just opened up at the bottom of your screen. So Connect commands are normally sent to STK from outside of STK using a TCP/IP connection or a COM interface. In this scenario, you'll use the API Demo utility to practice and understand Connect commands. The API Demo utility functions inside of STK, therefore no outside connections are required. The API Demo utility is a great place to practice Connect commands prior to using them in an actual script. First, you'll see over here on the left where it says Examples. When you click an example, the associated connect command appears in the code sandbox. Connect isn't compiled code. Connect is simply a string of text written in a way that STK understands. So for instance, if you had a script that you were writing, it would be put in quotation marks and sent with your code into STK. And basically what a connect command does is a GUI function. And we'll see that here later on. Connect is also sometimes referred to as the language of STK. To the right of that is the code sandbox. The code sandbox is where you enter your connect commands that you're going to build, or you load the pre-built example connect commands if you want to practice connect. Then you'll see the connect and the object model radio buttons. When you load an example connect command, you can view it as a connect command or select the object model to see examples of how a line of code might look inside an application such as MATLAB. In order to use a third-party application which you want to talk to STK, you'll need advanced capabilities. Then you'll see a button called Run Code. Clicking Run Code will send your connect command to your scenario. And then at the bottom you'll see an output field. The output window is used if you want to send a connect command which returns data such as data inside an access report. And we're going to see all of this in action. So we're going to start with what's called the new command. The new command allows you to create a new scenario or add a new object to the current scenario. I'm going to come down here to the examples section of the API demo utility and click Add Facility. In the code sandbox, you'll see that connect command. And we're going to break it down. So for instance, new is the actual connect command. The / after new is your application path. Then the asterisk / facility is your class path. And then finally, my facility is your object name. There are a couple of rules inside of STK and inside of Connect. Wildcards can be used in Connect commands, and you can go into the help files to look up those wildcards. The application path is a path to the instance of the current application, which in this case is STK. The class path, going to the facility object, specifies the full class path of the object to be created. And of course, in this case, it's going to be a facility. Then the object itself, the object name, is the name of the facility object. And there's some rules to object names in STK. And this doesn't just apply to Connect, it applies to object names overall. Object names cannot be more than 64 characters in length. Object names can contain only alphanumerics, underscores, and hyphens. Object names in Connect are not case sensitive, however, class names are case sensitive. An object name cannot be _default or end, regardless of case, as these are reserved words in STK. So let's see how this Connect command works. So I'm going to come over here to the Run Code button and click Run Code. Let's go up to the Windows menu at the top of STK, open up the Window menu, and select Tile vertically. And what this will do, it'll allow us to look at both the 3D graphic window and the 2D graphic window. You can see that a default version of the facility object was loaded into our scenario, and it was given the name MyFacilityCon. Now there's a whole section in STK Help devoted to Connect. You can use the commands in the Connect library to easily build applications that communicate with STK. Let's go up to the top of STK and open up the Help menu. Now I would point out there's two helps here, STK Help and Programming Interface Help. Both of these have the Connect command library in them. The only difference is STK Help is for STK general use. Programming Interface Help is really designed for programmers or people trying to learn how to do it, and that includes the object model. But we're going to use STK Help, so go ahead and click STK Help. When STK Help opens up, on the left you're going to see a selection for integrating with STK. Go ahead and select that. This is definitely the best area of STK Help if you're going to start using Connect. I'm going to come down below that and I'm going to select the Connect command library. Note that there's a lot of information in the Connect command library to include breaking down Connect commands by object, 2D and 3D graphic windows, by module, etc. To keep things simple, we'll focus on the API demo utility examples. You can find much more in-depth training in the optional third-party programs, such as our Level 2 training. We have some training in there integrating STK with MATLAB, integrating STK with Python, and integrating STK with Excel. We also have something in our Level 3 focus problem specific lessons that uses Connect, and the lesson's called Using Connect to Plan a Predator Mission. Those tutorials require advanced capabilities in STK. The alphabetical listing includes all Connect commands regardless of their groupings. So I'm going to come over here underneath Connect command listings and select alphabetical listing of Connect commands. Up at the top of the alphabetical listing, you can see the alphabet. So if you know which letter your Connect command starts with, you can just click on it to jump to that section. If you look in the alphabetical listing below here, you're going to see the commands on the left, the format, a description of the command, and then the version. The version is not the version of STK that the Connect command can be used in. That's the version of STK that the Connect command was designed in. If it's in this list, you can use it in your scenario. Let's go up to the top to the alphabet and click N for new. I'm going to click on the new command. And so if you look at this, it's going to give you a description right from the beginning, and then it's going to show you some syntax. Then you'll see some related commands underneath that, and then there's a further description that breaks it out in a little more detail. And then finally, we give you some examples. If you're new to Connect, I can't overemphasize how important it is to come down here and look at these examples when you find the Connect command you want to use, copy them and paste them, and then modify them to work in your scenario. Again, that API demo utility that we're getting ready to play with is a great place to practice that. Let's go back over here to the left and click alphabetical listing again. Now we're going to look at the set position command. You can use the set position command to set the position of a facility, place, target, or area target. Let's go up here to the alphabet, click S, and then come over here and start scrolling down till you find set position. It's in alphabetical order. Now you're going to see two. One's for facility, place, target, and area target. These are ground sites. Set position is this one below it is for vehicles. So it's going to give you different options. We want to select the one for facility. So click set position for facility. So you can see the set position command is going to allow you to select the type, the coordinate type, and parameters. Well, let's look at that by going down to this chart. We've been using STK now for a little bit, and we know that a facility object, a place object, target object defaults to using geodetic coordinates. We're going to be using geodetic coordinates. You can see that we can do latitude, longitude, then some of our options are altitude or terrain, and then you can also use mean sea level. Let's go ahead and close the help, and let's get back into STK. So we're going to move our facility object, and we're also going to attach a sensor to the facility object. So let's go back over here to the examples, click on Modify Facility, and let's look at our code. So in the set position command, you can see that it's going to the facility called MyFacilityCon. It's going to use the geodetic coordinates, and then the latitude is 37.9, the longitude is minus 75.5, and then the altitude is 0. You have to take into consideration whether you're using the WGS84 ellipsoid, or you're using streaming terrain, or you're using your own terrain file. In this case, we have streaming terrain coming into STK. We haven't turned it off. In order to put our facility up on top of that terrain, we need to fix this command. So I'm going to come over here to that 00, and we're going to replace that with the word terrain. This will ensure that when I run this code, it's going to put my facility object on top of the terrain. If you look at the new command underneath that, it's going to follow the same path as you would see in the object browser. So I'm going to the facility called My Facility Con. I'm entering a new sensor object, and I'm going to call that sensor My Fact Sensor Con. Let's go ahead and run that code. Let's go up to the object browser and open up the properties for My Facility Con. So I'm going to right click on My Facility Con and select Properties. A lot of times when you're working with Connect, the options are going to sort of follow how you would see the setup in the property. So you can see here, for instance, geodetic is my first choice. Geodetic's my type. Then I got my lat long. That's what's next. Latitude, longitude. And then whether or not I'm using terrain data. And you can see that we turned on use terrain data. Had we not put terrain down here in the command, this would be unchecked. Let's go ahead and cancel that. Next, we're going to add a satellite object. So I'm going to come back over here to examples, click add satellite. Now I'm not going to keep jumping back to the help files anymore, okay? So later on when you have some time, you can go back into the help files and look at Connect command library and all the stuff that's in there. I'm just going to explain to you here because we're doing another short tutorial here, so I just want to go ahead and stay online here. So I'm going to look at my Connect command. We're going to enter a new satellite object, and we're going to change the name of that object to MySat. And you might want to pay attention to this if you take the level 1 certification, because you'll do this in the level 1 cert. Once you change the name of that satellite, go ahead and click Run Code. If you look in the object browser, you'll see that you have your satellite, but I don't see it in the 2D window or the 3D window. There's a simple reason for that. We haven't propagated our satellite. Let's go back over to the examples and click Modify Satellite. If you look at that command, the set state classical command sets the orbit state of the satellite using classical coordinates. Let's look at this. So I have my set state classical command. We're using a 2-body propagator. Then you're going to see a time here, and this is your start time of your ephemeris, and then the second time is the stop time of your ephemeris. Then you're going to see 60 seconds. That's what that is. That's your time step. It's going to sample your orbit every 60 seconds. The J2000 is your coordinate frame. Then you're going to see another date. This one is your orbit epoch. And then you're going to see a huge number, 6,678,140. This is your semi-major axis. Now, what's going on here is we know that from our training so far, STK defaults to using kilometers for its distances. Well, Connect uses meters, so you need to keep that in mind. Then we got a bunch of values after the semi-major axis. The first 0 is your eccentricity. The next number, the 28.5, is your inclination. Then we have argument of perigee, right ascension of the ascending node, and then mean anomaly. This is not stuff you have to memorize. This is all in the help file. We're going to make some changes to our code. I'm going to change the object name because if we don't, you're not going to see anything happen. So I need to come over here to the object name and call it the same name as my satellite in the scenario, MySat. Then we're going to change the inclination to 45 degrees. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to highlight the inclination that's in there and type in the value 45. And finally, we're going to change the right ascension of the ascending node, which is the next to last number, and we're going to make that 180. So MySat was my change. My inclination, I changed to 45 degrees. And my right ascension ascending node, I changed to 180, which is also in degrees. Go ahead and click Run Code. And now if you look at your 2D window and your 3D window, you've propagated your satellite. Let's insert an aircraft object. We're going to insert an aircraft object using the new command again, and then we're going to change the propagator to great arc, and then we're going to reference mean sea level as our altitude. Let's go over here to examples and click Add Aircraft. Let's look at all these lines of code. So again, we got a new command. We're entering an aircraft into the scenario called My Aircraft Con. Then we're using the set propagator command, which sets the propagator, and then we use the grade arc, so we're setting the propagator to grade arc. Then we're using the altitude ref, and we're referencing mean sea level. And then we're adding waypoints. But let's look at the waypoint line. It's entering the waypoint using the first number here is your latitude. The second number is your longitude. The third number is your altitude. But here's what's different about this altitude. Inside of the properties of the aircraft, the altitude defaults to kilometers. Again, Connect uses meters. So you have to keep that in mind. So we're putting this aircraft at an altitude of 11 kilometers. The next cell in there is your speed. Inside the properties for the aircraft, it sets your speed at kilometers per second. If you look at this, it's setting it at kilometers per hour. Let's go ahead and run that code. And again, this is all, if you go back into the help files, it explains all that. So click Run Code. And you'll see in your 2D window and your 3D window, you now have an aircraft object. Let's modify that aircraft. So I'm going to come back over to the examples, click on Modify Aircraft. And you'll notice that the first command is waypoints, is we're clearing those waypoints that we originally have. And we're going to add 2 new waypoints. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Let's just run the code. And again, I want to emphasize something here. Connect is not designed to do these GUI functions inside of STK. It's designed to be doing stuff from outside of STK and sending information to STK without you even having to open up STK. Maybe you have a whole pre-built scenario and you want to modify it every day with new values. This is just to show you how you can use the API demo utility inside of STK to practice that. I can't overemphasize that. Let's go ahead and compute an access. So we'll compute an access from the satellite to the facility. So I'm going to come back over here to examples, click on compute access, and then in the code sandbox, let's look at that connect command. We got an access command going from the satellite to the facility. We need to fix the code to ensure that it's doing it from our satellite called MySat. If I move the facility in front of the satellite, then I would be doing an access from the ground site to the satellite. Let's run that code and watch what happens. So we got a couple things going on here. If you look at your 2D graphic window, you're going to see your access lines where you can see the satellite. And also now down in the output window, it's showing you the full path. And then it's showing you the accesses. And the way you read this, and it's a little hard to read, but it's still showing you how you can pull data using this command. The first number is your start time of that access. The second number is the stop time of that access. Now, if you were using something like MATLAB, for instance, in the output field in MATLAB, you could be saying, okay, I want all the end times on the left column and all the stop times on the right column. But in here, this is how it works. Let's go ahead and add some vectors to our ground site. So I'm going to come back over to the examples and click Add Vectors. Now you'll notice for both of these lines of code, it starts with VO. Anytime you see VO, you're doing something with 3D. The first command, if you look at this, we're telling it to set the vector geometry, and we're adding a vector, attaching it to the facility, pointing it at the satellite, and then we're telling it to turn it on visually. We need to change the code in that line in order for it to point at our satellite. So I'm going to change the name of the satellite to MySat. The second line of code uses what's called view from to. We haven't looked at that, so let's look at that now. I'm going to go up to the 3D graphic window, and I'm looking at the toolbar, and I'm going to select this tool that's called View From To. It's the eyeball with the arrow. Older versions of STK, I believe it was version 8 and older, to zoom to an object in STK, you had to use this tool. Nowadays, you can just go into the object browser, right-click on the object, and select Zoom To. The way this would work is you'd go into the from position and you would, let's say we wanted to zoom to the facility object, we'd select facility in the from position, and then we'd go to the to position, we'd also select the facility. And what that would do is that would zoom to that object. Conversely, if I had selected the facility in the from position and selected the aircraft in the to position, and my aircraft was actually flying over my facility, it would have been as if I was sitting at the facility watching the aircraft out in the distance. There's a lot of other stuff that you can do in here. I highly recommend coming in here and playing with this sometime. But for now, we're going to cancel. So let's look at that second line of code. We're using the view from to. We're doing from the facility to the facility, just like I told you. And then the window ID is important because it's telling it to do it in a 3D graphic window. Window ID 1. Let's run this code. So a couple things happened here. First, it zoomed to that facility object, just like I said it would, and it attached a vector that's pointing at my satellite. Now, right now my satellite is below the horizon, so therefore my vector is too. So I'm just going to zoom underneath the surface of the terrain so I can see it. And then I'm going to go up to the animation toolbar and click the start button, which is going to animate my scenario. And you'll see that vector continuously tracking the satellite, whether or not it's above the horizon or below the horizon. So that's it. Let's reset. This was just a simple introduction. Let's move on to the summary. So our final lesson was an introduction to Connect. It was an introduction to the Connect command library and how to find Connect commands. We also introduced you to the API demo utility, which is one of multiple utilities that come with STK that you can find in our HTML section that you can use to practice Connect commands before you put them into a script or whatever you're going to do with your Connect commands. We also found that Connect is not a programming language. It's a string of text that's sent to STK that does GUI functions. So I believe that what these lessons did for you gave you a very good introduction to STK. Hopefully, when you start looking at some of the advanced capabilities in STK, you're going to know how to use STK now and how to get around inside the properties, what the objects do. And then also, I hope that if you want to take the level 1 certification, you have all the tools you now need to take that certification and to pass that certification. If you do that, good luck. And if you're just going to use STK for everyday use, good luck with that too, and have some fun with it. And there's a lot more that you can learn other than what I just gave you here. So have a great day.